factoid, if you will, that's been brought into this in a documentary, which, by the way, is all allegedly. No one's been guilty of any crimes, right? Innocent until proven guilty, right? So, if all this took place and went on for several years, and a young man's interpretation of sex, boundaries, mother-daughter, mother-son relationships are completely as far from the norm as we can imagine. Going into that difficult age we all go through, those early teens where we transition to a grown-up, open inverted commas. His interpretation of normal when it comes to relations is going to be completely gone. And I'm going to throw something out there. What if he witnessed his mother interacting with individuals and using it for some sort of higher gain? Photographs, or using that house for entrapment purposes for mobsters or other gangs. Now, I'm freeballing this, and no evidence here. Okay, let me get my legal banner up here. But wouldn't it be interesting if something that happened back then, as simple as maybe a one-time, oh, well, did you know that was a politician? Or blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying they were ladies of the evening. I'm saying this sounds a lot more like a party den with, a menu of services. But do you think it's possible that he possibly witnessed a level of blackmail from a sex point of view from that vulnerable young age that has just left such an imprint on him that it's snowballed into what we see today? I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, I don't know if I would say the leader of the gang, Patty, right? Because I honestly feel there's underlying father, like, son and mum things that maybe would give a perception of power, or just mum things. But I think this man would destroy anyone that would say that they're above him in his world, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Right. So, I'm just going to say Swan. Okay. So let's discuss the possibility, right, that at some point the narrative has gotten out that this isn't really his mum, allegedly. Okay. So let's just for a second imagine this is his aunt. All right. And then just imagine for a second, all right, as creepy and horrible as it is, things in a weird, messed up, no boundaries family dynamic that might happen between an aunt and a nephew that might not necessarily happen between a mother and son. Does that make sense? Because if that's the case, this changes a lot of things for me. Thanks, here. At least if as a discussion, as a debating topic, because I think it's a very big distraction from more important things. But it's a fun debate topic for sure, because that opens a whole other can of worms with this. It really does. Bates Motel, 100%. But I honestly feel like, if you had a budget and the time and you went back through the people that were in this documentary, I think we could find the catalyst. All right. Oh, no, Momstar. This is not like a justification. Okay. This is like a fascination. Okay. So for me, the monsters are monsters, right? But for me, what fascinates me the most is the catalyst. What was it that made them? Because someone who's raised beautifully and goes on to be a monster, to me, is more fascinating than somebody who has a reason or a justification or a way of going, well, don't worry, guys, sleep well at night. It turns out he's a monster because. The because is what allows us to sleep at night, knowing that, hey, it's okay, they're not like us. Do you see what I'm saying? As a species, there's comfort in knowing there's corruption or illness, or you know, the old argument of trauma breeds trauma. Does that make sense? And for me, Diddy, nothing gets excused. This isn't justification. This is fascination from me, that there may be a reason. He may have been molded. He may have been made and not born. You know, you want to hear some outlandish, crazy conspiracy stuff? Wait to hear my theory on what happened with that whole basketball game and the catapultic rise to fame that came after it. You know, because it's wild. The whole thing is wild. And Diddy's mum, Diddy's aunt, whatever you want to throw it in there. We heard the big bodyguard guy in the documentary. I can't remember what his name is. Gene something. He spoke about how Diddy's mum would give him orders and tell him to go and get things from the car and try and throw her weight around. And he would push back against it. And you can definitely see that she would have been using her son's position to the max, 1,000,000%. Because you can see how she revels in her son's admiration in these videos. It resonates with something that when you combine all of the Didysphere lore, legends, facts, and things that have yet to be proved or disproved, his mum and him have this incredibly bizarre bond the more we look into it. Okay. And like this new information from this new documentary is fascinating to me, because I have no sympathy for monsters, but understanding what makes them makes us stronger against them, if that makes sense. You learn nothing from a lion in a cage in the zoo. You learn nothing. You have to watch the lions in the wild to learn how they act in the wild, because they'll present themselves differently once you put them in a cage, right? People get what I'm saying? Because how people act when nobody's around and nobody's looking is true humanity. And I made a point earlier. We are pre-programmed to do this. And I'm going to prove this to you right now. Why else does a 5-year-old stick his hand in the cookie jar when no one else is around? Where has he learned that deception from? It's pre-programmed. We're pre-programmed to, if we're told not to do something and we can get away with it without anyone seeing us.
That's a good point.
Even at 5, we're going to do it. No one's taught us that, but we're going to do it. So are we as a race just pre-programmed to take opportunities when no one else is around? And only you can answer that to yourself. It's one of these philosophy, look inwards, and only you will know the question to that, the answer to that. But these are the things that fascinate me about cases like this, especially with the diddler. And we were talking about all of the male on male stuff that went on. And when I analyze if Diddy was to be guilty, metaphorically speaking, of everything, all of the stuff with Diddy that happened with the cameras and everyone, that is nothing short of just control. It is his knowing that he has made you knowingly or unknowingly go through, and now he has evidence of it for control, allegedly. That is what I believe his fetish is, metaphorically speaking. It's you will do as commanded. It is scary. It's one of the scariest mindsets you could ever have. when it comes to KINK and the SEX realm, okay? But to have that mindset with a budget like he does is terrifying because he made a point of one of his band members had annoyed him, right? One of the girl bands he was running in this documentary. And he said something along the lines of, well, if she doesn't get her act together, I'll DRUG her and then PIMP her out to my N words. Okay. That is somebody who he has worked with for like a year at this point. So that's what he's willing to do to her. Imagine what would happen to the people he has nothing with, no connection. The friends of friends that are brought, the ladies that are the lower tiers from the streets, all this kind of stuff. And then we apply the what people do when people are around compared to what they'll do behind closed doors to that. It becomes a terrifying narrative. It really does. But we have to ask ourselves, why are we so pre-installed for being little devious rascals? It's fun and games when we're 5 and we're stealing a cookie, right? But as we evolve in the dark places where no one else is looking, that's where we find who our true self is, for good or bad. It's wild, right? And if Diddy has been raised in a world with absolutely zero alleged boundaries, an absolutely bizarre relationship with his mother and his mother's friend, allegedly, this possible glamorization of this over sexualized world that he bore witness to, and the possible witnessing of blackmail in that world as a tool by someone around him. And that manifesting into what we see now fits perfectly. It fits perfectly because a lot of people, horrible, nasty people, when they're caught, only really care what effect it has on their mother or their wife. There's been several people who've done horrible things in over the years, and when they're asked about regrets, it's like, well, what the effect that it's had on my family and my loved ones. But when you've got a loved one who is allegedly egging you on and saying everything's okay, where's the line here? So I think it's going to be fascinating. The more we find out from people who grew up with Diddy, what took place, what happened with him growing up, and how it kind of shaped who he was. It just all fascinates me because it allows us a better understanding to analyze different dynamics of someone when we think that there's possibly red flags. And not every time will the same catalyst or the same, things that have caused allegedly Diddy to be this way will be the same in the next person. It's just we need to learn how monsters are shaped to have a much better understanding of keeping our kids safe, the signs, data points that pop up time and time again. Because I spent a lot of my time many years ago doing a lot of investigations, and I stepped away from it for a long time. And I'm getting a bit frustrated because, like, I feel like it's never been as bad as it is. But you got to understand, all of my work was online, so I'll keep you updated with some stuff. But I want us all to think in our communities, right? We need to be responsible for our own kids. And I feel like community is something that has been so dissolved that we're almost afraid to know our neighbors and know our communities and all of this. In some sense, for some people. And I think we need to integrate and talk more with those around us because hiding away and fearing everyone lets them all win. You know, I'm not saying let your guards down. I'm just saying it's better to have community and know who you're living around than to assume everyone's evil and run away. Keep vigilant, stay vigilant, keep your guards up. But the minute that we get to a point where we're all just hiding inside because we believe we're either going to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, and that everybody that is different, we need to just unite. Because together, honestly, together we're a lot stronger than apart. Now, the rest of this documentary goes on to talk about what happens later in life with Diddy. I think we know a lot of the accusations that have been thrown, but they talk about when the lights turn red. Okay. And 1 second, everybody. Sorry about that. When the lights turn red and Diddy has the white part, he's suddenly turn a different color. And, you know, listen, I'm not being funny. You know, a white room with a bunch of LEDs, you can, you know, what if I just push a button right here? We can completely change how all of this looks and feels from the red into something that mixes with the red lights and makes everything pink. But I do love a bit of painting with LEDs. But they talk about the red rooms, and we've even heard witnesses